Hey everyone, hope everything is going well. Today we're going to have a different type of podcast. Today I'm going to be interviewing my buddy John. We're going to be talking about who's the GOAT in the NBA. There's a lot of people that get into discussions, heated discussions, but I think now's a good time. We're closer to the NBA Finals, and a lot of people are talking about it. John, how's it going, man?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me on.
Yep. Okay, so in your opinion, who is the GOAT of the NBA? Is it Kareem? Is it MJ? Is it LeBron? Who do you think it is?
I would say the GOAT, in my opinion, would be Michael Jordan. There's numerous reasons going by. I would say maybe it's good to start off with MJ and LeBron because that seems to be the consensus number one and number two, or who would argue in terms. But I go with Jordan for there's a couple of reasons, but I would say my first reason, and you can, add this. You said it on a video, that Jordan is the GOAT and LeBron, but my first reason that stands out is defense. If you look at LeBron and Jordan, I think Jordan's just a better defender. And I think offensively, I think they're a little similar. I would give the edge to Jordan because of the score, but I think defense, Jordan stands above him. The first reason is if you look at it, Jordan's won Defensive Player of the Year I believe, the 1988 season. I don't know if it's 87-88 or 88-89, but I believe it's around 1988. LeBron's never won Defensive Player of the Year. So everyone talks about rebounds, points, assists. But I would say first, it also starts, defense, stopping the best score.
Yeah, speaking of defense, it was 1988 with with Michael Jordan winning the Defensive Player of the Year. From my notes, he is the 9-time NBA All-First Defensive Team, and he also is the steal leader 3 years in the NBA, which is also a hard feat. So, besides on the offensive side of the scale, with Jordan averaging about 30 points per game throughout his career, he was pretty stellar in terms of his defense.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing, too, is like what people don't remember is that if you look at blocks, LeBron James is known for his 6'9" height and his long arms and his, he is a good blocker. I'll give him that. But, Jordan averaged more blocks per game. And even though LeBron James has that block, in the finals against Golden State where he pinned it up against the backboard, Jordan has types of blocks like that, too. In fact, Jordan leapt high in the air in the 80s and against the Knicks. I believe this is the first time they ever played each other. I think Patrick Ewing's head was at Jordan's ribs and Jordan just blocked it flat out into the stand. So Jordan has those type of signature blocks just like LeBron.
Oh, yeah, definitely. If you look at the clips, Michael Jordan was just as efficient as LeBron James when it came to the blocks. And I do remember LeBron James, unfortunately spanking my Bulls in the playoffs maybe like 7-8 years ago, when he was with the Cavs, when he was with Miami. So, bad memories about that. But in terms of other people saying LeBron James being the GOAT, why would you argue that he's not the GOAT? He has definitely great credentials. He has eclipsed Michael Jordan in terms of points. He has 17 All-Star appearances. People would say that he's been in different schemes. He's with Miami. He's with Cleveland. He's now with the Lakers. He's won with different coaches, different personalities. Why would you say that Jordan is better where Jordan stayed, with Phil Jackson, the triangle scheme, Ted Winters, and all of that. He had Scottie Pippen throughout, so they all know each other. So this is what people say, like, hey, LeBron James was with all these other guys. What would you say about that?
Well, in terms of LeBron James going to different teams, LeBron James also brought his boys to his teams. Like when he went to Miami, he recruited Chris Bosh, and he went to Dwayne Wade. So he didn't really go to a different system. Like if you ask me, then he came back to Cleveland. He brought Kevin Love with him. And then when he went to LA, he talked it out with Magic, and they worked out a deal to get Anthony Davis. So he had say in all those how those teams were run. So I wouldn't consider it a completely different system. LeBron James sort of knew what he was getting into. He got to control things. It wasn't like he was asked to do something and he had to do it or he was gone. So, I mean, I think that's sort of a little disingenuous with the different systems than Jordan. Jordan, he still won. He still won in different, like he won with Doug Collins. He didn't win a championship, but he won. And with Phil Jackson, if you read the book Sacred Hoops, one thing that stood out to me was everyone talks about Jordan's unbending will, but Jordan also was a very team-oriented player in a sense where, he ended up listening to Phil Jackson and he embraced the team-first philosophy, getting your teammates involved. It took a lot. Like Phil Jackson would always tell him, like, you can't win this by yourself. You have to do it. And the other thing Jordan did was everyone talks about how petty he is, but I don't know how true that is, how petty he is. Like, he's obviously very competitive. I don't think you need to, I don't think anyone that, knows anything about basketball doesn't know that. But what's not emphasized is when Dennis Rodman was a free agent and the Bulls lost to the Magic in the second round, or maybe it was the finals. I'm not sure, but I know they lost to the Magic in the playoffs. And that was in the Last Dance documentary. They talked about how he didn't like how Horace beat him. I don't remember it completely, but Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen did not want to bring Dennis Rodman over to the Bulls because of the bad blood with the bad boys. And Michael Jordan sat him down, and whatever said was said. We don't know what was said, but he was willing to put the past behind him to win a championship. He said in one interview, you can't hold a grudge for the rest of your life, which I don't know Jordan, but they say he holds grudges, but whatever they say, he says. But in this case, he didn't hold a grudge. He was willing to put, his personal grudges aside for the betterment of the team, which I'm not sure if LeBron James has ever done that. The main thing that really got me is I was watching the Bucks versus the Nets last night, and at the last minute, I remember I texted you this. Kevin Durant hit a game-tying shot, and what I noticed was the Greek Freak was not guarding him. Back in Jordan's days, when Jordan played, if the best player on the team was going to get the game-winning shot, Jordan was on him. And we were doing some research today, and when the Mavericks beat the Heat in the finals in 2011, LeBron did not, and I made sure with different articles, he did not guard Dirk Nowitzki once. If a player from another team was dominating the Bulls in Jordan's era, Jordan would be checking him. At some point during the game, Jordan would try him. And Jordan, he would face all challenges, all comers. LeBron James, I don't know why he didn't try checking Dirk. I mean, if LeBron was 6'5", I would actually understand why. But LeBron's 6'9". Dirk's, he can leap out of the building. I think, when Dirk started really dominating, LeBron should have checked him. So, I mean, lockdown defense, Jordan, the triangle was great, and I think the system was great, but I think Jordan also made it better. And I don't think LeBron James was really, he had say in what went in all those teams. It wasn't like he was told to mold himself into the system. Those systems, I think, molded around LeBron James, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think you should play with the players you have personally, not make them fit into a system. But I think that's a little overblown if you're going to compare LeBron to Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I look at it is that LeBron James is more like the GM, where he could choose pieces, the chess pieces, and who he wants on the team. And usually management will give him a lot more than what Jordan wanted. Jordan detested Jerry Krause. I believe he was the vice president of operations. He was a very high up title. He had the trust of the owner, Jerry Reinsdorf. And in the 80s, Jordan was good buddies with Oakley, and then Oakley was traded. And I believe they got Cartwright. So Cartwright did actually help them win the first three championships for the Bulls. But Jordan derisively called Jerry Krause crumbs because he was a short, pudgy dude, and Jerry Krause was the number one enemy for Michael Jordan. And the thing is that Michael Jordan did not like the fact that when he was injured in the 80s, Jerry Krause said that you can't play, you're property. So that irked him. So Jordan never liked management, but he still stood with the Bulls, which was quite interesting. Back in the day, we had players, they stuck with the team no matter how much they hated management. So I find that interesting. And then eventually they got Phil. Phil got in his head saying that, we can't do what we did under Doug Collins, where Doug Collins made the offense around him. Phil Jackson said, you got to share the ball. He still won the most scoring points, from I think 91 to 93, the years that they won the championship. And I think Jordan, despite him having a grudge against Jerry Krause, I think he used it to his advantage because he always talks about, turning a negative to a positive. So maybe his grudge, he just used it to show Jerry Krause, I could do whatever I want. I could still win. So I don't know what you think about Jerry Krause and, all these mishaps that happened. And, Jerry Krause blew up the team in 98 because Phil Jackson motivated the team to go against management, and Jerry Krause, unfortunately, stopped another championship, which they could have won in 1999, which I think was a shortened season. So they could have won, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think they would have won. And that's the one thing about Jordan is that we don't know how many titles he could have won. I personally think he would have won at least one more had he not retired in the middle. In his second year coming back, now I think Jordan wasn't in playing shape, so I didn't think that was a complete accurate description, but I still think they would have lost that year because Horace Grant, he led the team in rebounding, and I'm not under the illusion that he would have stopped Hakeem or helped stop Shaquille O'Neal, but where I think it really hurt and Shaq and Hakeem would have easily been able to dominate the boards, I think the second year Jordan was gone, even though technically he wasn't really gone. He came back, but he wasn't in playing shape. I think it's possible Jordan would have lost a championship there. And I would go back to the Russell Celtics. They dominated. I think Bill Russell won like 13 titles. But during one of those years, Will Chamberlain's 76ers got through. And obviously it was an anomaly, and I think that could have happened had Jordan stayed all those years. I think the Rockets could have gotten through the second year with Clyde Drexler and Hakeem Olajuwon, and I think the Bulls would have lost Horace Grant, and I think the Rockets would have dominated the boards because the Bulls were a really good rebounding team too. That's what's lost in all that. I don't have the exact numbers or stats. My memory as a kid, under the Rodman years, they were actually the number one rebounding team in the league, but don't quote me on that. So I think when they got Rodman back, though, and Rodman also beat up Shaquille O'Neal. So, I think it could have been an anomaly. So I think Jordan, and then the year he retired, had they not done that last dance, I think he would have won at least one more. So I think Jordan would have won 8 at least. But in terms of Jordan and LeBron, my main thing that really separates is that Jordan was on defense. LeBron is a better distributor. He's led the league in assists, but if you look at offensively, Jordan, he's the greatest scorer of all time. He has more points per game on a career average than any player that's ever played in the NBA. That includes Wilt Chamberlain, who at one point averaged 50 points a game in a season, which I don't care what era that is. That's impressive. 50 points in a game. He didn't score it once or twice. He averaged it. And that was over a long season. Now, there were only 8 teams in the league, but still, a lot of teams, they get to know you. And they get to know your quirks and, how you play, your moves. They can devise things, and you still drop 50 a game. So that's impressive. So I would say offense, I just remember also just no one stopped Jordan for the most part when the game's on the line. He has that game, the most famous one with Brian Russell. And his defense, he was a lockdown defender. When the game was on the line, I remember showing you all these pictures of Bird guarding Jordan or Jordan guarding Magic. The culture of Jordan's era and Bird's era was if one guy was dominating your team and you did not check them, it was like a concession that they were better than you. And that's why even though Pippen was the defender for most of the time, at the end of the game, Jordan always guarded the best, for the most part, guarded the best player. And I think one of the reasons he was so competitive that he didn't want any type of concession that they were better than him if they lost. So if they lost and he didn't guard them, that would be. So I mean, Jordan on defense. And what the other thing about Pippen is Pippen was a lockdown defender. In fact, in my opinion, he was the best perimeter defender of that era. And I think one of the reasons is Jordan and Pippen used to play one-on-one after practice. I don't really know the exact years. Not the second time Jordan came out of retirement or the first time Jordan came out. The second time it was with the Wizards. That's a whole nother story. And I lived in D.C. I lived through that nightmare. But Jordan, while getting to their first 3 titles, Pippen played Jordan one-on-one, and it would be every day after practice for 3 hours. They used to compete constantly. And I think that's one of the reasons Pippen was such a great defender is he had to guard Jordan practically every day for 3 hours.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And going back to Pippen, so some people would argue that the Bulls got lucky with Scottie Pippen. So the owner of the Bulls is the owner of the White Sox, Jerry Reinsdorf, and now I think his son runs the whole ship. And Jerry Reinsdorf has a philosophy, and his son have a philosophy dealing with young guys. They tell them that, hey, here's money up front. So I think he offered a 5-year, $18 million deal, which at the time, was considerably a good amount of money for Scottie Pippen, who grew up in poverty with a large family. And Reinsdorf Krause told him, don't sign the deal because you're betting against yourself. Scottie Pippen was like, this is the most money my family's ever seen, generational wealth. I'm going to take the deal. Scottie Pippen took the deal. He was obviously not happy with the deal. So people would be like, okay, Michael Jordan got lucky because Reinsdorf and Krause, they were able to get Scottie Pippen to sign a long-term deal, which actually helped the Bulls out. But LeBron James didn't have to deal with that because guess what? We have a salary cap. Players demand more money. You see all these guys that are in backups getting maybe $7-8 million a year. So what would you say about that?
Well, in my opinion, if you're going to win 7 or 8 championships in the salary cap era, you have to underpay someone. You have to find a way to underpay any type of superstar in your team to able to win consistently. I would say the best examples in football, rookie quarterbacks. That's where you win your Super Bowl. Tom Brady took less money to build a team. Patrick Mahomes is now doing that. He's learned it. To win multiple championships for over a sustained period of time, you have to find a way to underpay a superstar. Look what the NBA is doing now. Kevin Durant did that with the Warriors. LeBron James took less money to go to Miami. That's what you have to do. And the Bulls, they may have lucked out, But I mean, to win that many times, you also need a little luck. I mean, I don't think you can hold that against. I actually do think, like, I mean, Jordan to me is the greatest because he was the best scorer of all time and one of the best defenders. And I just mean on a pure production standpoint. I don't think anyone can really match Jordan. I do think championships per se are the most overrated in terms of a team because I look at it as organizations win championships, not players or not even coaches per se. Top to bottom, general manager, coach, players, the whole package. So I mean, the Bulls, regardless, they were a great organization at the time, maybe dysfunctional, but Jerry Krause, I hope Jordan's not listening to this because he might come after me, but he was a really good GM. Like, he, I don't think he's listening to it, but he was a really good GM. I don't think you can argue with his record and what he did. Phil Jackson's probably the greatest coach ever to coach basketball, and then they had Jordan and Pippen, two Hall of Famers, and they had Rodman, who's one of the greatest rebounders. And if you ask me, he's probably the greatest defender of all time because he could guard the point guard and the center. I've never seen someone that could do that. You can guard Shaq and Magic Johnson. That's a very quite unique feat. And Horace Grant was a really good player too. He was an all-star the year Jordan left because he got more looks. So I mean, top to bottom, but what transcended Jordan is he was a lockdown defender. He was one of the best. He was a guy who led the league in scoring and won the Defensive Player of the Year. I don't know many other people that were able to do
that. One last topic I wanted to get into. This may actually tick off some people, but it definitely needs to be talked about. And it's regarding the NBA ratings. And I'm looking at the series against Utah. We had over 30 million people watching that game when you had the population size of the U.S., which was less at that time, I think 250 million. Now there's more people in the U.S., close to 330 million. And if you look at last year's championship game, we saw approximately 6 million people watch the Heat versus the Magic. And I would say that they had good players. You had AD, you had LeBron James with LA, you had Jimmy Butler with the Heat. And we're talking about, great NBA players. And a lot of people, in my opinion, didn't watch because they don't like LeBron James. They don't like his opinions. They don't like the way he expresses his political beliefs. And there are people with political beliefs, but I believe he rubs people the wrong way, which is hurting the NBA brand, in my opinion. What would you have to say about that?
Yeah, I would say that is, there's, I think, two reasons the NBA ratings are sort of tanking. But yeah, I think the politics is one of the reasons it's really declined since 2018. When I go out to eat, I don't ask the waiter or waitress or the cashier, their opinion on politics. I could care less. Same thing with watching basketball. I could care less about any of their opinions. I don't look at them as philosophers. I look at them as great athletes. I admire their physical abilities, not what's in between the ears. I'm not calling them dumb or anything, but I don't, I'll be honest, I view them as way better athletes than me. I don't view them as smarter than me. So, I think politics has turned a lot of people off. And when you get political, you alienate a lot of people. Like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was a huge activist in sports. In the 1970s, he was the face of the NBA. Well, we know what the NBA ratings were like. So, they don't learn from history. They're going to repeat it. So I would say under Jordan, Magic, Bird, it wasn't political. It didn't matter where you were from. You can be from anywhere around the world. Jordan didn't care who you were, where you came from, or anything. If you wanted to watch basketball, he wanted that product available to you. He didn't care who you were. So they need to get back to that. Jordan is in the NBA. Hopefully he can talk to them about that, about why they should. So, I would say politics is the main is one of the drivers, and I think another driver is that Jordan retired on top. So I think subconsciously, not people I don't think are consciously thinking this. I think subconsciously, the fact there was no passing on the torch. I know a lot of people haven't watched since Jordan's retired, and I think one of the reasons is Jordan is the best. They've seen the best the sport can offer, and so they're just looking for other things to do. When you've seen the best the sport can offer, and there's no potential for something better subconsciously, I think some people just will tune out for good. So, but yeah, I think the politics is really because people forget the history. During World War II, there's a movie about this, A League of Their Own. People watched women's baseball, which is and they watched it because they couldn't watch men play baseball because they were serving overseas. So what happened when the men came home and went back to men watching baseball? So people watch sports during a pandemic to take their minds off stuff, and the fact that the NBA ratings declined during a pandemic is not good news for the league.
Yeah, I would add that Michael Jordan transcended the league. Wherever Michael Jordan went around the world, he was greeted with open arms. He was in France, the typical alpha male people, they went crazy for him. And the Last Dance documentary, even illustrated that. And now we have players from all around the world. We have Giannis from Greece. Yeah, I believe he's Nigerian. And then you have Luka Doncic. And I believe because of Michael Jordan, we have been able to attract talent from throughout the NBA. So not only ratings, I think Michael Jordan did a great service to the NBA in making it a global brand. Because before, when Michael Jordan played, sure, you may have had a few players from Serbia. You may have had some players from Africa. But now I see it more of an international game because Jordan, and then you could say that someone like Kobe Bryant brought in all of these foreigners to the NBA with top talent. I don't know if you agree with me on that statement.
Oh, absolutely. The Wizards starting center for a while was from Poland, Marcin Gortat. So he brought players from everywhere. I forget, Giannis Vesely was also a Wizards draft. I forget where in Europe, but I'm trying to forget about that pick. But yeah, the game has definitely, Tony Parker, the point guard for the Spurs was from France. He was a really one of the best point guards in the league for a long time with the Spurs, and he won some championships. Manu Ginobili, I don't know where he was from, but I remember
I think Argentina.
Argentina, yeah. Oh, maybe he played in the Italian league, but he was from Argentina. So yeah, there's a lot of, and that's because of Jordan. Jordan to be the GOAT, and I always say you can argue from a pure standpoint that Kareem was better because there was longevity. He has as many championships, more MVPs, but Kareem did not transcend the game like Jordan. And the other thing too, I would say is, some people argue to me that Kareem won with the Bucks and the Lakers, and he won in different systems. But I always argue in 1986 when they played the Rockets, Hakeem really lifted the Rockets. And during a Bird Magic argument, they were talking about the '86 Celtics, and Bird actually told Magic, "Well, we would love to play the Lakers, but you guys didn't bother to show up that year." So Bird was the biggest trash talker in the league. If any of you don't remember. He talked more trash than anyone. But going back to Kareem, is Jordan never lost to a team that had where the best player had a lesser supporting cast. Jordan, if there was an equal or better, even if there was the other player had a better supporting cast, Jordan could come out on top. So now I do think Jordan's supporting cast was very underrated. Like when Jordan retired, that team took the Knicks down to the wire. It's, I believe, 7 games, but they almost beat the Knicks without Jordan. And then the Knicks took the Rockets into 7 games. So he had a great he did have a really good supporting cast, but I mean, no one wins it by themselves. No matter what sport. Tom Brady, Babe Ruth had Murderers Row. LeBron James had, Anthony Davis, and then there was Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving and Bosh and Wade. Bird had McHale and Parrish. Kareem had Magic, and then first time he had Oscar. So no one does it by themselves. I mean, that's another reason I think championships are somewhat overrated. But with Jordan, I look at it solely as a pure production standpoint.
Yeah. Last thing, I did say that I think a few minutes ago, but I think Jordan got into the head of so many people. I think he learned it from Larry Bird, and I think you were telling me, or you told me to watch a video where Larry Bird was playing in a exhibition game, I think against Jordan, and he kicked the ball way over Jordan's head, and he was smack talking to Michael Jordan, and Larry Bird was basically saying, you can't mess with me. I'm the leader of the NBA, and you got to work your way up. And I think Jordan got into the head of so many people, including members on his team. And because of the psychological tactics, I think he was able to motivate his team in crazy ways, and he was able to shut down the opponents. I don't know if you agree with that.
Oh, yeah, he did. He ruined some players' careers. Not just, I mean, one was Sidney Moncrief, where he, like they said, psychologically abused him. He went to the Bulls, and it was Jordan's third title, and then he never played in the NBA again. I'm not going to elaborate on it because I didn't really read too much about it. I'm going from memory. But Jordan also did it to people on the other teams, like Muggsy Bogues. Jordan called him a midget and told him, "Shoot that shot. You can't make it. I'll give it to you." And it was like at the end, like the Hornets. It was a game winner type, and Muggsy Bogues missed it. And Muggsy Bogues said, my jump shot was never the same ever since." So Jordan, yeah, Larry Bird. Jordan always learned from other teams. Like the Last Dance documentary, I don't know how many people got it, but during the Space Jams, he had that whole court, and he would have all the players come in, and they would do scrimmages. And while Jordan wasn't playing, he was studying every player's move and what they were doing. I don't know if you saw that or not, but he made sure he had the game tape on all those players because he knew he was going to play against them. And he knew he was going to see them come playoff time, and he wanted to be ready. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think there's, as a Wizards fan, I've seen what Jordan can be destructive. But I mean, when he was with the Bulls, he was the GOAT. Like there's no one I think that can. Maybe if you did just one season, maybe there's a Will Chamberlain season where he had 40 points and 28 rebounds. But I mean, over a sustained period of time and leading a team to a championship, I don't think anyone could match Jordan. Like Jordan would never quit on a team in the finals. As you said, when he got injured, I remember the interview, and he was like, "Well, that's a loser organization. As long as I'm here, we're going to be in the playoffs, and we'll be looking to go to the playoffs every year." The thought of not making the playoffs was just foreign to him.
Yeah, he never walked out on his team, unlike LeBron James, as we saw a few times. And, speaking of Jordan, I think we'll talk about it in a future video. But, yeah, he did get into some guys like Kwame Brown. Jason Whitlock said that he definitely abused him, and, it definitely screwed him up. But, Kwame Brown was smart enough not to say anything at that time. And now, he's destroying everyone on YouTube right now. But, yeah, we'll talk about that another time. But any final thoughts on MJ before I let you go?
Not really anything is that, but I guess the one thing I just want to reiterate that I saw, people watching this, whether they agree or not, they can feel free to disagree. I'm just some guy on YouTube. I'm not really end all be all. But I mean, the reason why Jordan is the GOAT is not just because he was a great scorer, not that he won championships, but he was just a great all-around player. He had no weaknesses. He could defend, he can rebound, he could rebound, he could score. He was a leader. He wasn't perfect, but no one is. We're all human beings.
Indeed, indeed. And we'll definitely have you back on in the future, John. And thanks for coming on again, man.
Thank you. So.